Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about how to answer behavioral questions during your interview, specifically for product management. As you'll notice, there's no plan today. I'm just trying out something new, a little negative space. So today we're going to be talking about behavioral questions, what they are, how to answer them, and what are the common mistakes. Recently, I've been getting a lot of requests for behavioral questions and how to answer them properly. Sometimes behavioral questions can really be the difference between getting the job or getting a rejection. If you do very well on your product questions, your strategy questions, your analytical process, the behavioral questions can still sometimes stump you. And so first thing we're going to talk about is what exactly are behavioral questions. Behavioral question is when an interviewer asks you, have you ever had a situation like this? What did you do? Or how would you handle this type of situation? Or how would you behave if this were to occur? The point of behavioral questions is to get the candidate to reveal the way they think about working together, about making progress on a project, about how they react to difficulties, challenges, or interpersonal situations or management situations. Basically, how they would actually do on the job. And it's of course very, very difficult to get a true representation of what the candidate would be like on the job, but behavioral questions actually do a pretty good job here if they've internalized it and are actually giving an anecdote from their experience and the relevant learnings from there. So that's why behavioral questions, sometimes if you're not prepared for them, they can really take the conversation in a direction that you as the candidate don't want the conversations to go. Let me start by telling you the right way, and then I'm going to tell you a few of the common mistakes that people make. So the right way is sometimes called the SAR method, and the idea there is that when you're asked a behavioral question, how would you behave with this situation, or have you ever had this happen, you start out by saying, sure, let me tell you about the situation, and that's the S, and then the A is the action, that's the action that you took specifically, and R is the result or the outcome of that action. I also want to add step 0 to that, which is try to figure out the signal that the interviewer is trying to get by asking this question, because you might be answering some different question entirely if you think that it's a different path, or worse yet, if you randomly just go into answering the question, you might miss the point entirely. So for instance, if an interviewer is asking, can you tell me about a time that you struggled in your work? You might think, okay, what is the interviewer actually trying to find out about me? Are they trying to find out how I deal with failure, whether I persevere, whether I can continue to lead in times of crisis, or whether I can actually execute when things are tough? That sounds like that's what it is. And so, because you have prepared these in advance, you actually think, okay, which episode from my professional career or personal life is going to be most relevant here? You think, which aspect will do a better job of demonstrating the signal that the interviewer is looking for? Then you choose that situation and you describe it in brief detail, and then you explain the steps that you took or the actions that you took and the outcome that occurred. I like to add another step on top of that, which is the learning. What did you take away from it? How did you use that information later to really reinforce the point that you are learning from everything that you do and that you are improving from everything that happens to you? So if you're asked, what are your weaknesses, for instance, this is a common one. First of all, you want to be ready for this question beforehand. You want to think of the few scenarios and the few weaknesses and the few attributes that you may want to talk about. And then again, you go into a situation where here's where I think my weakness is. Here's a situation where I think it could have really helped me to work on this weakness, and so therefore I am trying to work on these weaknesses in the following ways, and this is the results that I'm seeing thus far, and I'm hoping to continue improving, and I'm going to continue working on. So it's very important that you actually plan for all of these. And the typical questions are, what are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? What would other people say your weaknesses and strengths are? What about your managers? What about your teammates or your employees or your partners? What are some tough situations that you've had? What are some failures that you've experienced? What are some successes that you've had? What was the most memorable launch that you had? What was your favorite product? How did you manage an interpersonal conflict? How did you motivate your team? Have you ever had to motivate your team? How did you deal with difficult trade-offs or with a challenging situation or interpersonal issue between two colleagues on your team? Have you ever been in an uncomfortable work situation? What was that like? And so you want to go over your history beforehand when you're practicing and actually think about the episodes that would do a good job of demonstrating the actual attributes that you want to demonstrate when these questions come up. So you want to list some weaknesses. Nobody's perfect, but you want to list them in such a way that you are aware of them, you're working on them, and you're trying to improve it. For the failures, you want to demonstrate that you tried to get past it. Maybe you didn't succeed at first, but then you succeeded later, or are in process of working it out now, so that you can actually get improved. And these are the learnings that you took away from that, and this is how you became better for it. So to review, again, first understand the signal that you're trying to get across, then think about the proper situation from your prepared episodes and talk about it. But before you talk about it, make sure you give a structure. Hey, I'm going to tell you about this situation. I'm going to tell you what I did and then what happened as a result. And here's the situation. Here are the steps that I took. Here's the outcome that I got. And here are the learnings that I took away. If you can stick to this, you're going to do just fine in the behavioral part of the interview. Now, here are some common mistakes people do. First, they jump right into answering the question, excitedly or not, it doesn't matter. But if you go off the rails, usually you will lead the conversation into a place that you really didn't want it to go, and it might have unintended consequences. The second piece is not understanding what signal the interviewer was trying to get and giving entirely different signals. You might have answered the question, but you didn't actually score any points as far as the interview is concerned. The third mistake that people make is listing red flags in their stories. There's sometimes you can actually list a red flag for someone who is a product manager by listing some things that are just unacceptable to do, because the interviewer is not going to take the chance that you will not make those mistakes again. Even though in those situations, sometimes it may be prudent, and I would prefer to take someone who has failed and learn from that. Unfortunately, that's just not how product management interviews work at top tech companies nowadays. Any red flag is likely to cause a rejection. So make sure you practice these beforehand. You've picked out your situations. They make sense for all these possible questions that we went over, and practice, practice, practice. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed it, please smash the like button and subscribe so you don't miss anything. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.